Hi there, this is Niki Rowland for Hip Kit Club, and I'm making a layout today for Sketch Friday. I have the June kit, so I'm using the main kit. I've also got the Pocket Life kit and the embellishment kit and the colour kit too. And we have this really cool sketch by Irit, which is like a big sun coming off of one side of the page. There it is. Yeah, so it's a really cool sketch, a bit different to normal, and I was excited to get started with this one. So I didn't want to just recreate the sun. I could have done, I did think about that. I also thought about making it into a stencil, and in the end I also thought about using an alternative shape or a traditional type starburst, but I had all these options in my brain, and then in the end I decided to make lots and lots of small tiny triangles that I'm just going to hand cut and have them all kind of coming out from a middle point from the edge of the cardstock. So that was my plan. I wasn't as happy with it as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be this really cool explosion of colour and triangles, but it didn't quite turn out how I wanted. But actually I'm quite happy with the way it did turn out in the end. I could just really struggle to get the angles right, but I say you'll see that in a bit. So I'm literally rough cutting with scissors a whole bunch of triangles. I've chosen certain colours from the kit, so I have a couple of Vicky Boutin papers, one or two I think, Sunshine and Blue Skies, and I've literally just cut them into long skinny triangles, and the idea is that I'll make this rough starburst crazy shape with all these shards coming off, yeah, but for some reason you can see me fiddling around with it here for a while, that I just couldn't quite get the shape right. It just didn't quite work. I'm still unsure as to what I was doing wrong. But yeah, I think they're certainly not all facing the same direction, as in they're not all pointing towards this middle section. When I came to do my stitching, I put stitching through each one of them. They didn't all meet in the middle, so there was definitely something off with my shape. Here actually I think it looks quite good, but it doesn't end up like this. I think maybe as I moved them around and played with them a bit too much, I think the problem was I was aiming for the edge of the paper, and what I should have been doing was I maybe should have put a dot somewhere on the cardstock and aimed every single point towards that, as opposed to the edge of the paper. So yeah, I think I just got myself into a bit of a muddle. The idea was a good one, but the execution not so good. But so I do get there eventually, and I have some of these larger ones coming off of, I wanted some of them to jut out so that they weren't all in an exact perfect shape. So I did some really long ones, I did some really short ones, I did some really super skinny ones, yeah, just say sitting here fiddling around trying to get it looking right. Looking at it now, I probably should have carried on going round the circle on the right hand side, but then I had this gap, so I possibly should have done that and just cut them off of the edge, but of course that wasn't in the sketch because we had the middle section of the sun. So yeah, anyway, it's not quite perfect, but it will just have to do as it's done now. Okay, so here's me still fiddling with these pieces. I'm going to go ahead and stick them all down. I'm using wet glue to stick them in place because they were too skinny to use my tape runner. So yeah, I'm just going to fast forward until they're all stuck in place. Okay, so they're all stuck in place now, and I've also run black stitching through the middle of every single one of those triangles. So I just use a straight stitch, black thread on my sewing machine to whiz them through. Normally I would stitch, and then at the end of doing all of the stitching I'd then pull all the ends through and secure them on the back with tape. But because there were so many of them, I figured that I would get into a muddle, so I did them section by section. So every time I did one colour, I stopped, pulled all the ends through and secured them on the back, and then I did the stitching on the next section and secured them on the back with tape, etc, etc. So I couldn't do it all in one go. So I'm now just layering up my two photos in the middle of the starburst. So I have used two of the Pocket Life cards to mount the photos. I love using the Project Life cards for photo stacks, and the reason I love it so much is because they match the papers. So I could cut up my 12 by 12, but why would I need to when I have perfectly sized little ones, little photo mounts already cut for me. So that's what I'm doing there. I really liked that journaling card that said great day, I think it said, or something, and in the lime green, and I wanted that to show at the top of my photo. So I've mounted my photos on 2 other cards. I've added the black and white one to the right. It says good times. Yeah, so I wanted that to stick out, and then I realised after I stuck everything in place that I hadn't distressed the edges of my Project Life cards, so I tried to do that quickly. You just saw me kind of trying to do that off camera, I'm now just getting that Pink Fresh Studio paperclip stuck in place. That's from the Out and About collection, and the words yes, more adventures, I think it says, which is perfect for these photos. We're on a exploring day, going around looking at dinosaurs, finding out about fossils and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a great little sticker that I put at the top of my photo there. I'm just going through and adding some Vicky Boutin stickers as well. So I pulled out a few arrows and I tried to incorporate them into my starburst design, but I really didn't like them. So I pulled them off again, and I just stuck with the one. I can get away with one, but I couldn't get away with any more than that. And then I've cut out this little circle from one of the Project Life cards. You can see the other part of it on the left of the layout there. It's got blue stripes on. Well, I cut those up later for my journaling, so I really made the most of that journaling card. I've used that emblem in the middle there and the journaling lines for journaling. I'm just going through the Vicky Boutin ephemera and pulling out a few bits that go well in terms of colours. I've pulled out 2 hearts that have got text on, and I'm just outlining those right now with a black pen, so they're just to give them some definition. I've pulled out a few leaves, a couple of lime green ones there I'm putting at the top, in the top section, a couple of turquoisey ones that's to the left of my left photo there, and those, a spray of flowers there that I'm just adding underneath those 2 pieces there, the Project Life card piece and the camera sticker, and I'm getting my 2 hearts in place there as well. So that's a few things. Basically I was aiming to cover up this middle section of that starburst that didn't have any patterns on, so it was a bit messy where the stitching was, so I just wanted to make sure that entire section was covered. So I've covered it completely with my photos and with all the little bits and pieces that I put around the photo too. So I've just pulled out the stamp set from the Heidi Swap stamp set, which came in one of the kits this month, and there's a few stamps on there that I really liked. So I loved the 2 little speech bubbles. One has a heart on, and the other one I think is an exclamation mark, and then the word yes. Well, we had such great fun that day and we were finding out lots of information, so the word yes seemed appropriate here, so I've added those all over the place there. And now I'm coming in with some of those little enamel hearts by Amy Tangerine, and just getting those stuck in place. Again, kind of going with a tone-on-tone effect. I'm putting blue ones on the blue section, and the green ones on the green section, and the yellow ones on the lightest green section, and the turquoise ones on the turquoise section, etc. So yeah, that's what I've been doing there. So I've got my spray of starburst is kind of expanding here. Now I'm cutting out those strips to add my journaling, so I'm just going to put those underneath my photo. I've then at this point realised that I don't have a title, so I feel like I need a title on here, and I want to use the word discover, but I've got so much going on with the stamping and the stitching and the starburst and the photo corner and everything that if I just put my letters directly onto my layout, all of that stuff is going to show through, and I'm going to lose the effect of my letters, especially as this font is quite skinny. So I've just stuck it onto a piece of white card, and I'm just going to trim closely around the letter stickers, and then I have the perfect title because all the background doesn't show through the gaps in the letters. So I've just had this fantastic white background, makes it stand out completely. Really great way of adding a title. So I'm going around and cutting out some of the detail there. There we go. So my word discover now shows up really nicely. And then once that's stuck in place, I'm then going to add my little journaling strips underneath. I'm just going to stick those flat. I want to write on them, of course. They're difficult to write on before they're stuck because they move around. So I wanted to stick them in place. So I just literally stuck them down with tape, and then I can write my journaling directly onto my layout. People ask me all the time, how do I make sure my journaling fits my my journaling space if I've done something like this? Well, I don't know it's going to fit, and I just adapt my journaling to what space I have got. So that's kind of how I make it work. So because I covered up that bottom left corner of the bottom photo, or the left photo, something's not quite right. You know, the starburst effect is lost a little bit. So I thought I would add some extra stamping in. I've added some extra yeses to extend it, but it just didn't look right. Those yeses they were just kind of in the wrong place. In theory, they're in the right place, but it just didn't work in practice. So I've covered them back up again with 2 pieces of white card. Obviously, it's stamped on and stays on ink. It's not going anywhere. And there's nothing I can do to cover it up with embellishments because I don't want to extend the starburst any further, because I tried that with the stamping and it didn't look right. So I've just literally covered them up with some white cardstock, and I'm hoping that my paint splatters will completely cover mean that you won't notice them. If you look hard, they'll always be there, of course, those 2 bits of white card, but it's the same card as the background, so that was the best way of dealing with that. Okay, so I'm now just adding paint splatters to my layout again. I'm aiming for kind of like a tone on tone section. The powders in these pots, the Lindy's Magical Shakers, or Magicals even, they totally don't look like the colours they actually come out as. So I kept dipping my paintbrush in the wrong powder. So that's why I've got some muddy colours going on up there. But in the end I got there, and I got some the right coloured flicks in the right places, which is good. And I don't have any black Lindy's Magicals, so I've just gone through and I've just added a tiny drop of black ink to my packaging, and picking it up with a paintbrush there so that I can then flick black ink spots onto my layout to match the starburst there. Okay, so that is me done. So it wasn't quite how I envisaged it to look in the first place. Not quite sure why it didn't really work out that well. I was hoping for a better effect than this one, but I don't mind it. I'm quite happy with it. It's okay. And I had fun doing it. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I used the June kits for this one, which you can pick up on the Hip Kit Club website. Yeah, happy scrapping. That was Niki Rowland for Hip Kit Club.